那你觉得现在这个佛教的这些理念跟这个现代科学，因为佛教是2500多年前的，那么现在21世纪的这个科学这么发达，那他们之间有没有什么发现一些矛盾的地方，或者说是佛教的思想跟不上这个科学，已经落后，或者说这个科学和这个佛教呢，就是互相有这个相辅相成之处啊。你对科学和佛教之间的对比，或者是在这方面呢，就是你什么样的感想，在你的研究和你的教学过程当中有什么样的一些看法？
I have a paper I just wrote on exactly this subject. This is a big project, but there is no contradiction, but both sides must be fearless. Start with that and then I'll give an explanation. So there's no contradiction, but both sides must have no fear. So we know that in the Abhidharma Kosha, there is a very careful description of Mount Meru and the 4 islands and the whirling clouds around the outside. We know that doesn't exist. If we try to preserve every statement like that within the Buddhist scriptures, then we are bound to fail. But the underlying principle of Buddhism is that it is therapeutic, it's healing, and it's empirical, it's based on evidence. And if we remember those two things, and we know that we have a good guru, a good lama, to support us, then it is possible to engage honestly with science and help science learn new things. So a really good example of this is actually in biology. Western intellectual heritage says the only kinds of animal that can know things are humans. But Kempola was saying yesterday, bodhicitta, we have to look at all sentient beings as our mothers. So for Buddhists, there is no sharp distinction between human people and other people. We now know from studies in animal behavior that animals as diverse as crows, monkeys, and octopuses are all intelligent, they all solve problems, and they all have a sense of playfulness. So we can no longer say that humans are the only knowing animals, which is what the Western tradition would want us to say. In this sense, Buddhism was right 2,500 years ago, and this is something that is a really basic assumption about Buddhist science, so to speak, that's correct. And the West needs to learn from that. Western science needs to learn from that. But, again, if you go back and you look at Asanga or Vasubandhu, they say that, first off, they did not know about bacteria, right? They didn't know about anything smaller than they could see. They hypothesized that there were atoms, but that's all they did. We now know that a person is actually, 90% of my genetic richness is my bacteria in my stomach, right? Most of my genetic richness is my bacteria. And we are social, right? In the formal Buddhist analysis, we can say there is no self. But this is a psychological analysis. If we are prepared to be brave, if we are prepared to be fearless, then we can look at the old Buddhist texts and say, well, they didn't know that plants talk to each other. They didn't know about bacteria. we can actually do Buddhism better now, because we can prove that a person, that non-self, it isn't just psychology, it's biology. Each person is composed of millions of organisms, and those organisms are all moving back and forth between us. Our mothers give them to us, and we give them to our children. We're a big messy thing. We're not, even biologically, we're not one thing. That's wonderful. That's a biological proof of something that is fundamental to Buddhism. So just as we have something to teach science, science has something to teach us. Both sides have to be fearless. That's why I said that. I think actually, without wishing to venture into too sensitive a subject, there actually is a very important role for this kind of thinking in the way in which China faces the environmental crisis. Because Buddhism has the capacity to teach political theory quite a bit about how to think about the environment. Right? For us, when we talk about an economy, it has to be an economy of all living things. It can't just be an economy of people. It can't be an economy of humans. It has to be an economy of all living things. Sustainable development, if we want to talk about sustainable development, it has to be sustainable development for the trees, the bacteria, the birds, everybody. But that's a dangerous thing to say in some contexts, but it's a necessary thing to say.